If you are curious what will happen next like me, comment 1 to get started. The cold steel pressed against Isaac Thorne's throat felt sharper than any Apache blade he'd faced in 5 years of frontier warfare. He woke to darkness, the taste of whiskey still bitter on his tongue, and the weight of a woman's knee pinning his chest to the narrow cot. "My father died in your cabin last night," she whispered, her voice carrying the deadly calm of a desert wind before a storm. "You were the last to see him breathing." How did a solitary rancher end up at the mercy of a beautiful Apache woman, and what dark secret connects them to a dead man? To understand how a solitary rancher ended up with a knife to his throat, we must go back to the beginning, to a day that started like any other at the Thorne homestead. The Arizona sun bore down on the land, the heat of physical presence, the silence broken only by the cry of a hawk circling high above the canyon. Isaac Thorne was a man who had made a life out of silence. A former soldier, he had come to this isolated ranch to escape the ghosts of a past that were as relentless as the desert sun. He was a man of routine, of a quiet, stoic self-sufficiency. He mended his fences, he tended his stock, he kept to himself. The nearby town of Cedar Falls knew him only as a shadow, a man who would trade for his supplies and disappear back into the vast, empty landscape. He was a man who had walled himself off from the world, a man who had forgotten the language of connection. But the desert has a way of reminding a man that he is never truly alone. If you believe that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in the face of it, then you will want to see what happens next. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Storytelling for more stories of the untamed West. That afternoon, as he was riding the southern line of his property, he saw a figure stumbling through the brush. It was an old man, an Apache, his face lined with the wisdom of 1,000 desert suns. He was weak, disoriented, his breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. Isaac, a man who had once worn the blue coat of the cavalry, a man who had been trained to see the Apache as the enemy, felt a flicker of something he had thought long dead, a simple, uncomplicated human compassion. He dismounted, his movements slow and unthreatening. He offered the old man his canteen, a silent gesture of peace in a land that had known too much war. The old man, whose name was Dakota, accepted the water with a grateful nod. He was a man of few words, his English broken but his meaning clear. He was a traveler, he said, on a journey to Fort McKinney, a journey of great importance. But he was weak, and the desert was a cruel and unforgiving master. Put yourself in that position, a former soldier finding a man from a tribe you once fought against, weak and in need of help. What would you do? Comment yes or no below if you would help, and tell us your reason. Isaac, a man who had turned his back on the world, found that he could not turn his back on this one, old man. He helped Dakota onto his horse and brought him back to his cabin, a small, simple structure that had not known a visitor in 5 long years. He gave the old man his own bed, brewed him a strong, bitter tea from the herbs his late wife had taught him to use, and sat with him through the long, hot afternoon, listening to the old man's labored breathing. As the sun began to set, casting long, tired shadows across the land, Dakota stirred. He looked at Isaac, his dark eyes, sharp and intelligent, holding a deep, profound sadness. He spoke of his daughter, Annaba, a woman of fierce spirit and a gentle heart. He spoke of his nephew, Awoke, a war chief whose ambition had curdled into a dangerous, all-consuming greed. And he spoke of a betrayal, a dark, terrible secret that threatened to engulf his people in a new wave of violence and death. He was on his way to Fort McKinney, he said, to warn them, to stop the bloodshed before it began. But he was weak, and he knew that he would not live to see the dawn. He pressed a small, leather-bound medicine pouch into Isaac's hand. "Give this to my daughter," he whispered, his voice a dry, rasping sound. "She will know what to do." And then, as the last of the light faded from the sky, he closed his eyes and was gone. Isaac sat with the body of the old man for a long, long time, the weight of the medicine pouch in his hand a heavy, unwelcome burden. He had not asked for this. He had not wanted this. He had just wanted to be left alone. But the desert, it seemed, had other plans. And as he looked at the peaceful, silent face of the old man, he knew that his life of solitude was over. He was a part of a new story now, a story of betrayal, of a brewing war, and of a woman named Annaba, a woman he had never met, but for whom he was now, inexplicably, responsible. The woman's breath was a steady, warm presence against his face, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of sage smoke in her hair. He could see the silver beads woven into her deerskin dress, the way the soft leather molded to her curves, the swell of her breasts as they rose and fell with each calculated, controlled breath. "Prove it," she said, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. He moved his eyes, nothing else, toward the bedside table. "Your father's medicine pouch," he said, his own voice a steady, unwavering counterpoint to the knife at his throat. "Still where he left it. The blood on those rags is from 3 bandage changes. I was trying to save him, not kill him." She followed his gaze, the knife never wavering. Beside the bed lay strips of torn cloth, dark with dried blood. The bitter scent of willow bark and yarrow still hung in the air. Her free hand reached out, her fingers touching the medicine pouch, a pouch she knew belonged to her father. "Do you trust your gut? If so, share this video with a friend who also trusts the voice of your heart." "You could have prepared this," she said, but a flicker of doubt had crept into her voice. "Could have," he said. "Didn't." He watched her face, saw the war that was raging behind her dark, beautiful eyes. "Your father told me about Awoke before he died," he said, pressing his small advantage. "About the raids he's planning. About the betrayal." The knife pressed deeper, a thin line of warmth just below his jaw. "You know nothing of my uncle. I know he's going to get a lot of people killed," he said. "White and Apache both." He shifted slightly, a calculated risk. "She didn't cut him. Your father wanted it stopped." "My father is dead because of white men's greed," she hissed, her thigh muscles tensing against his ribs. "Because of men like you." "Maybe," he said. "But right now, men like me are the only ones who can get close enough to Awoke's camp to stop what's coming." Has a small decision ever suddenly changed your whole life? If possible, tell your story in the comment section. She studied him for a long, silent moment, her dark eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. The moonlight caught the sheen of perspiration on her throat, traced the line of her collarbone where it disappeared beneath the soft, worn leather of her dress. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a different weight, a weight of a decision that had just been made. "I am Annaba," she said. "Takoto was my father." She pulled the knife back an inch. "I watched your cabin from the ridge. I saw you carry him inside. I saw the light burning all night." He exhaled slowly, a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. "Then you know I tried to help him." "I know you failed," she said, the blade trembling again. "But perhaps not by choice." She shifted her weight, and he felt the heat of her body through the thin fabric of his shirt. "Awoke plans to strike in 3 days," she said. "The trading post at Canyon Creek first, then the town." "How do you know?" Her smile held no warmth. "Because he told me himself, before I learned what he truly was." She rolled off him in one fluid, graceful motion, landing on her feet beside the bed with a predatory ease. The loss of her warmth left him feeling strangely, inexplicably empty. She tucked the knife into her belt and straightened her dress, the movement accentuating the curve of her hips. "You want to stop him?" she asked. "Then you'll need me. A white man, alone in Apache territory, won't live long enough to find Awoke's camp." He sat up slowly, rubbing his throat. "And what makes you think I'd trust you not to put that knife between my ribs the first chance you get?" She moved to the window, a dark, elegant silhouette against the pale, moonlit landscape. "Because," she said, looking back at him over her shoulder, the moonlight painting silver highlights across the bare skin of her shoulders. "You're the only white man who's ever tried to save an Apache's life instead of taking it. And because I need you alive to help me kill my uncle." The words hung in the air, a declaration of a shared, dangerous purpose. And in that moment, Isaac Thorne, the man who had sought only solitude, knew that his life had just become inextricably, and perhaps fatally, entangled with the beautiful, deadly woman who now stood before him. They rode out at dawn, Isaac on his bay gelding, Annaba walking alongside, her hands bound with a rope to maintain the illusion that she was his prisoner. It was the only way they could travel through the disputed territory without drawing bullets from both sides. The rope chafed her wrists raw, but she never complained. Instead, she used the discomfort to fuel the cold, hard fury that had been building inside her since her father's death. Every step toward Ayak's stronghold brought her closer to the confrontation she had been planning for months, a confrontation that would either save her people or get her killed. "Tell me about him," Isaac said as they climbed a steep, rocky ravine. "Your uncle. He was a war chief, once," she said, her breathing growing heavier as the trail steepened, her chest rising and falling beneath her deerskin dress in a rhythm that he found distractingly beautiful. He fought alongside Cochise. But gold changed him. White men's promises changed him. If you have ever been so determined to right a wrong that you were willing to risk everything, then you understand the fire that was burning in Anaba's soul. If you believe in the power of a single, courageous voice to change the world, then subscribe to Mr. Storytelling for more stories of the untamed West. "What kind of promises?" he asked. She stopped walking, turning to face him, her eyes burning like hot coals. That if he helped them clear the land of troublesome Apache, they'd give him a territory of his own, a reservation where he could rule. Her laugh held no humor. "He believes their lies." Isaac dismounted, ostensibly to check his horse's hooves, but really to break the spell of watching her move. "So he's selling out his own people." "Not just selling them out," she said, her voice a low, fierce whisper. "Hunting them. My father discovered that Ayak was leading white soldiers to our winter camps, places where families gathered to survive the cold." Her voice cracked slightly, a small, almost imperceptible tremor. "Children, Isaac. He's helping them kill children. Put yourself in that position, discovering a betrayal so profound it threatens to destroy everything you hold dear. What would you do? Comment below, and let's talk about the difficult choices we make for the people we love." The pain in her voice hit him harder than he had expected. Without thinking, he reached out to touch her shoulder, then stopped himself, the rope between them a stark, physical reminder of the deception they had to maintain. "That's why I have to stop him," she continued, her voice regaining its steady, unwavering resolve. "Not for revenge. For justice." They made camp that evening in a narrow canyon, sheltered from the wind by high, red sandstone walls. He built a small, smokeless fire while she gathered what edible plants she could find. When she knelt by the stream to wash them, her dress clung to her body in a way that made his mouth go dry. The curve of her back as she bent over the water, the way the wet fabric outlined the swell of her hips, everything about her seemed designed to test his self-control. But it was more than just desire. There was something about her strength, her quiet, unbending determination, that called to a part of him he had thought had died with his sister, a part of him that still believed in the possibility of a better world. "You are staring," she said, without looking up. "Sorry," he said, turning his attention back to the fire. But the image of the water droplets clinging to her skin remained, burned into his memory. "I didn't say I minded," she said. When she stood and faced him, her dress was still damp, the leather molding to her body like a second skin. "But if we're going to work together," she said, "you should know something about me." "What's that?" "I don't break easily." She walked toward him with a deliberate, hypnotic slowness, her hips swaying with each step. "Men have tried," she said, her voice a low, dangerous purr. "White men, who thought an Apache woman was theirs for the taking. They learned otherwise." She stopped just close enough that he could smell the sage in her hair again. He met her gaze steadily. "I'm not those men." "No," she said, her head tilted, her dark eyes studying him. "Then what kind of man are you, Isaac Thorne?" The question hung between them, a challenge, an invitation. He could have given her the easy answer, the one that kept them at a safe distance. Instead, he told her the truth. "The kind who's killed too many people," he said, his voice a low, rough sound, "and saved too few." He stared into the flames, the firelight casting flickering shadows across the harsh, rugged lines of his face. "The kind," he said, his voice a low, rough murmur, "who watches a woman risk her life for justice and wonders if he's brave enough to help her." Something shifted in her expression then, the mask of the cold, determined warrior slipping, revealing a glimpse of the woman who lay beneath. "You helped my father," she said, her voice softer now, less of a challenge and more of a quiet, wondering statement. "When you could have let him die. That took courage." "Did it?" he asked, his own voice a raw, honest sound. "Or was I just tired of living with blood on my hands?" She knelt beside him, so close now that her knee brushed against his thigh. "Maybe both," she whispered, her fingers, light as a feather, touching his wrist just above the pulse point. "Maybe that's what makes you the right man to help me." The touch sent a fire through his veins, a fire that was not just lust, though there was plenty of that, but something deeper, something that felt like recognition. As if two broken, jagged pieces of a whole had found each other in the darkness. "Annaba," he said, his voice rougher than he had intended. "Yes. If we do this," he said, his own voice a low, unsteady thing. "If we go after Awoke, one of us might not come back." Her smile was soft and sad and achingly beautiful. "Then we'd better make sure," she said, "that we have something worth dying for." And when she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, it was not the kiss of a stranger, not the kiss of a prisoner, not the kiss of a payment. It was the kiss of an equal, of a partner, of a woman who had seen the darkness in his soul and was not afraid. It was the kiss of a woman who had chosen him. And as he kissed her back, as he let himself drown in the soft, warm, and utterly intoxicating taste of her, he knew that he had chosen her, too. It felt like coming home, after years of wandering in a desolate, unforgiving desert. They found Awoke's camp on the third day, hidden in a box canyon 20 miles south of the territorial road. From their position on the rim, Isaac counted at least 30 men, a mix of Apache warriors and white outlaws, all of them united by greed and a casual, brutal violence. "There," Annabelle whispered, pointing to a large, black tent in the center of the camp. "That's where he holds his council." Isaac studied the layout through his field glasses. Guards at every approach, horses picketed in a natural corral, weapons stacked near the fire. It looked more like a military outpost than a raider's camp. "How do we get close enough?" he asked. "We don't," she said, her eyes holding a dangerous, determined glint. "You do. Alone." "That wasn't the plan." "Plans change," she said, turning to face him, her body blocking his view of the camp below. In the harsh, unforgiving desert light, every curve of her was outlined against the sky and the stone. "Awoke knows my face. But a white man, with guns to trade? He'll welcome you like a brother." He lowered the glasses. "And leave you here to what? Wait and hope I don't get killed." "Leave me here," she said, pulling a Winchester from her pack and checking the action with a practiced, deadly ease, "to cover your escape when things go wrong. I'm a better shot than you think." Before he could argue, she was moving down the back slope of the canyon, using the scrub brush and the rock formations for cover. He had no choice but to follow, leading his horse and trying not to think about all the ways this could end badly. An hour later, he rode into Awoke's camp with a pack mule loaded with rifles and ammunition, weapons he had taken from a group of dead bandits 3 days earlier. The guards eyed him with suspicion, but they didn't shoot, which he took as a good sign. Awoke emerged from his tent like a king greeting a supplicant. He was tall for an Apache, with gray-streaked hair and the bearing of a man who was used to being in command. But his eyes, they held the cold, hard calculation of a man who had sold his soul and had found the price to be acceptable. He had traded his honor for power, and in doing so, had become the very thing he had once fought against. If you were Isaac, a man who had sworn off violence, would you be able to walk into the heart of an enemy camp alone, with a lie on your lips and a prayer in your heart? Share your thoughts on this ultimate test of courage in the comments below. "You bring gifts to my camp, white man," Awoke said, his English accented but clear, his tone a mixture of suspicion and a dawning, greedy interest. "What do you want in return?" Isaac dismounted, his movements slow, unthreatening. "Information," he said. "Safe passage. Maybe a chance to make some real money." "Money?" Awoke's laugh was like the grinding of stone on stone. "What kind of money?" "The kind that comes from knowing which settlements are going to be hit next," Isaac said, his voice a low, confidential murmur. "Which ones have the best pickings and the weakest defenses?" He pulled back the tarp that was covering his pack mule, revealing the rifles underneath. "I figure a man with your connections might know such things." Greed, a raw, naked thing, flickered in the war chief's eyes. "These are military weapons," he said, his hand reaching out to touch the cool, blue steel of a rifle barrel. "Fresh from an army supply wagon. The kind of wagon that might have other valuable cargo aboard." Isaac let the implication hang in the air. If a man knew where to find it, he said. For the next hour, they negotiated like merchants at a trading post, a tense, high-stakes game of bluff and counterbluff. Isaac fed Ayak just enough information to keep him interested, while learning the details of the planned raids. Canyon Creek tomorrow at dawn, the town of Cedar Falls 2 days after that, then a coordinated strike on 3 different settlements. Time to prevent a military response. You want in on this? Ayak said finally, his eyes, cold and assessing, fixed on Isaac. You prove yourself first. Tomorrow, you ride with us to Canyon Creek. Show me you can kill white settlers as easily as you trade with them. Isaac felt his throat tighten, a cold, hard knot of a fear he had not felt in years. Innocent people were going to die tomorrow, unless he found a way to stop it. Fair enough, he said, but I'll need proof this isn't some kind of trap. Something to show my partners back east that you're the real thing. What kind of proof? Letters, he said. Communications with your sponsors. The white men who are backing your operations. The smile faltered slightly. How do you know about? A man doesn't outfit 30 fighters with military-grade weapons unless he's got serious money behind him, Isaac said, his voice a level, conversational tone. Money that wants something in return. I do business with men like that all the time. They appreciate discretion and results. After a moment's hesitation, a moment in which Isaac could feel the weight of his entire life hanging in the balance, Ayak nodded toward his tent. Come, he said. I'll show you what kind of results we deliver. Inside the tent, Isaac saw maps, marked with strike targets, correspondence with territorial officials, supply manifests that made his stomach turn. This wasn't just raiding, it was a systematic extermination, disguised as Indian troubles. Impressive, he said, his mind racing, memorizing as much as he could. Who's your contact in the territorial government? Colonel Harrison at Fort McKinney, Ayak said, his voice filled with a smug, self-satisfied pride. He arranges for the troops to be elsewhere when we strike. In exchange, we make sure the right people get blamed for the attacks. He poured whiskey from a bottle that had probably been looted from some murdered family. To profitable partnerships, Ayak toasted. Isaac raised his glass, then threw the whiskey in the war chief's face and drove his fist into the man's throat. Ayak stumbled backward, choking, as Isaac grabbed the incriminating papers and bolted for the tent flap. Shouts erupted across the camp as he threw himself onto his horse, bullets whining past his head. He spurred the animal toward the canyon mouth, riding low in the saddle. Behind him, he could hear Ayak screaming orders, in Apache and in English. Then, the first rifle shot cracked from the canyon rim, and one of his pursuers toppled from his horse. Annabelle was covering his escape, just as she had promised, picking off the riders with a methodical, deadly precision. This was their point of no return. They had the evidence. They had the truth. Now, all they had to do was get it to someone who would listen, and live long enough to tell the tale. He reached the mouth of the canyon just as the sun touched the western horizon, painting the rocks a bloody red in the dying light. Annabelle was already there, with 2 fresh horses, her Winchester smoking in her hands. Did you get what we need? She asked, her voice a low, urgent whisper. He waved the stolen papers. Enough to hang Harrison and half the territorial government, he said. But Ayak's still alive, and he knows we're coming for him. She swung onto her horse with a fluid, graceful motion. Then we'd better reach Fort McKinney before he does, she said. They rode through the night, a desperate, high-stakes race against time, toward an uncertain dawn, carrying the proof of a widespread betrayal and the fragile, flickering hope that justice might still be possible in a land where trust came at the point of a gun and love had bloomed in the shadow of a shared, deadly violence. The morning sun painted the walls of Fort McKinney a deceptive, peaceful gold as they rode through the gates under a flag of truce. The stolen papers in Isaac's saddlebags contained enough evidence to expose Colonel Harrison's conspiracy, but presenting it would require a leap of faith from men who had little reason to trust either of them. General Morrison, the fort's commanding officer, a man whose face was a roadmap of 100 frontier battles, listened to their story with the weary patience of a man who had seen too much of the territory's dirty politics. But when Isaac spread the documents across his desk, the supply manifests, the payment records, the detailed, damning correspondence between Harrison and Ayak, the general's expression hardened. If this is true, he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl, It represents a treason on a scale I have never encountered. It's true, Annabeth said quietly, her voice a steady, unwavering counterpoint to the general's rising anger. My uncle believed he was saving our people by choosing the winning side. He never understood that men like Harrison see all of us as expendable. The arrest of Colonel Harrison sent shockwaves through the territorial capital. His network of corruption unraveled like a badly woven blanket, taking down politicians, traitors, and military officers who had profited from the manufactured conflict. Ayak's planned raids collapsed as his funding disappeared, his white allies finding themselves in prison cells. But the victory came with its own price. Annabeth stood on the ridge overlooking the valley where her father was buried, the wind lifting her long, dark hair like a banner against the evening sky. She wore a new dress, blue cotton with white flowers, a gift from the general's wife, who had insisted that a hero deserved better than blood-stained deerskin. He would have been proud, Isaac said, joining her at the grave marker they had built from the canyon stones. Would he? She asked, her voice carrying an old, familiar pain. I killed his brother. I destroyed his last surviving family. You stopped a war, he said, his hand, no longer hesitating, touching her shoulder. You saved hundreds of lives. White and Apache both. She leaned into his touch, seeking the warmth of a human connection that was no longer a thing of danger, but of a quiet, unassuming comfort. And what do we do now? She asked, her voice a soft, wondering sound. The world hasn't changed, just because we exposed one conspiracy. He considered her question as the first stars appeared overhead, a vast, silent canopy of a million tiny, flickering lights. The frontier was still a hard place, still full of men who saw violence as the solution to every problem. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly why it needed people who chose a different way. We build something better, he said finally, his voice a quiet, unwavering promise. Together. 6 months later, they stood in the doorway of a small, simple cabin overlooking a green, peaceful valley in the Colorado Territory. Annabeth's belly showed the gentle curve of an early pregnancy beneath her simple, homespun dress, and her hands, no longer clutching a knife, but clasped in his, were the calluses of a woman who had learned to work the land beside each man she loved. The two worlds, the one of the solitary, grieving rancher, and the one of the hunted, desperate warrior, had not just met. They had merged. They had become one. If you believe that a family is not defined by blood, but by the love and loyalty that binds us together, a love that is willing to risk everything for a cause that is greater than themselves, then share this video. Let's celebrate the quiet, unassuming heroes who choose to stand for what is right, no matter the cost. What is justice? Is it a word in a law book, a verdict handed down by a judge? Or is it something more? Is it the quiet, unwavering courage of a woman who refuses to let her people be slaughtered, the steady, unassuming bravery of a man who chooses to stand with her, even when it means standing against his own? The story of Isaac and Annabeth is a testament to the idea that true justice is not a thing that is given, but a thing that is taken, forged in the crucible of a shared, improbable, and profoundly beautiful struggle. It is a story that reminds us that the greatest battles are not always fought on the open plains, but in the quiet, hidden canyons of the human heart. And that sometimes, the most profound and lasting victories are the ones that are won not with a gun, but with the quiet, unassuming, and profoundly compassionate power of a love that dares to defy the world. Years passed. The small cabin in the Colorado Valley became a home. The child, a son with his father's steady, gray eyes and his mother's fierce, resilient spirit, grew up in a world that was defined not by the color of a man's skin, but by the content of his character. The Thorne homestead became a place of peace, a sanctuary, a testament to the idea that even in the harshest of landscapes, in the most desolate of hearts, a single act of courage, a single spark of love, can take root and blossom into something beautiful, something true, something that lasts. The story of their fight, of the conspiracy they had exposed, became a quiet legend in the territory, a cautionary tale whispered around campfires, a reminder that the line between civilization and savagery is often thinner than we think. Isaac Thorne, the man who had been a ghost in his own life, found his own kind of peace. He was not just a husband, not just a father. He was a partner, a protector, a man who had learned that the greatest strength is not in building walls, but in opening doors. Annaba, the woman who had been a hunted, desperate fugitive, was now the respected matriarch of a small, thriving ranch, her quiet strength and gentle wisdom a guiding light for all who knew her. Their love story, born in the shadow of a shared, deadly violence, became a testament to the idea that the deepest bonds are often forged in the hottest fires. They had faced down the ghosts of their pasts, and in doing so, had built a future that was brighter and more beautiful than either of them had ever dared to imagine. What is a home? Is it a place on a map, a deed in a dusty courthouse? Or is it a sanctuary, a place where the broken are mended, where the voiceless are given a name, where the lost are finally, blessedly, found? The story of Isaac and Annaba is a testament to the idea that a family is not something you are born into, but something you build with your own two hands, with the quiet, unwavering strength of a compassionate heart. If you believe that everyone deserves a place to call home, a place to heal, a place to belong, then subscribe to Mr. Storytelling. For in these stories, we find the best of who we are and the hope of who we can become.